Welcome to the Children's Foundation Chat About Children. My name is Linda Southward, and I have the honor of being the Executive Director of the Children's Foundation of Mississippi. We believe that for Mississippi to reach its potential, our children must reach their potential. So we are delighted to welcome Dr. Ashley Parker Shiels as today's guest to share with us more about the work of Mission Acceleration. But first, a little bit more about Ashley. Ashley is the director of Mission Acceleration, a high dosage, high impact tutoring program housed at the University of Mississippi. Ashley earned her PhD in teaching and learning from Southern Methodist University in 2017. She has more than 15 years of experience in the field of education, spanning K-12 experience in Mississippi, Tennessee, and Texas, where she's taught reading, served as a literacy instructional coach, and directed research projects. But her real passion is really about literacy education. And she is focused on ensuring that students receive equitable access to effective teachers and leaders, and engaging communities in supporting the students and families. She's also the mom of twin boys who are almost 5, but she has a heart for all children in Mississippi. So Ashley, welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Southward, for having me. I could not be more thrilled to be a part of this today.
Well, we're just so thrilled for you to be on this. And I heard you speak on another Zoom conference a few weeks ago. And when I heard your presentation and the things that are going on, I thought, oh, we need to have Ashley here to have this even a broader audience to talk about the work of Mission Acceleration. So would you tell us the sort of a play on word, but would you tell us the mission of Mission Acceleration?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, Mission Acceleration is a high dosage, high impact tutoring model, and we'll talk about what that really means in just a second. But our mission is to accelerate learning and reading growth for children by providing individualized and small group instruction in reading. We know due to the pandemic, so much instructional time was lost or spent asynchronously or out of classroom settings that children are so used to. So our mission really was to come alongside schools and teachers and children and families to provide this extra support to get these students back on track with where they needed to be with their reading growth.
And so we have known for many years now that the first 8 years are so important. Really, those first 1,000 days of a child's life are critically important, and how that impacts reading, because the first 8 years, where we learned many years ago, children are learning to read, and then after which they learn to read, they read so that they can learn. So it has really multi-generational impacts when you think about the importance of this. So tell us, how long has the organization been in place? You mentioned, as we all know, the pandemic changed a lot of things, is an understatement, but how did this come about?
Yeah, so great question. We have been in effect for a little over a year now. We started last summer, June of 2021, and we did receive GEAR funds to start this work and to do this pilot program, and that's the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Funds under the CARES Act. So we just are wrapping up our 4th iteration, our 4th round of programming this summer.
Okay. And I know that I think you have some slides that you're going to share with the audience, but as you're getting those on the screen, what would they know about it getting in touch with you? I guess you'll have that contact information as well.
Absolutely, yes. And I will gladly put currently on this slide, you'll have, there's my cell phone number, in addition to our website and my email address. So more than happy for anyone to reach out in any format that is appropriate for them. This program is obviously something I'm passionate about, and I know our stakeholders are as well. So eager to talk to anyone that would like to learn more. So as we were discussing about the GEAR funds and kind of how we came about, this slide is just a quick kind of who, what, where, when, why, if you will. As you mentioned, we are housed at the Center for Excellence in Literacy Instruction. But what's really unique about Mission Acceleration is our pilot year, this first year of programming, was centralized in our Mississippi campaign for grade level reading communities. And these communities obviously are those that have coalitions of stakeholders that have come together to prioritize literacy instruction in their communities and children reading on grade level by the end of third grade. And as you mentioned, this is something that prior to the pandemic, it was a wraparound service of support that was needed to help children and families accomplish that incredible milestone. And for many that were struggling, programs pre-pandemic became even more, I guess, rare during the pandemic because of everyone having to stay remote into quarantine. So we were really thankful to see those GEAR funds, the call for proposal to come out. So when we were awarded funds in December of 2020, going into 2021, this model that we created was with these communities in mind, communities that have resources available for children and families related to reading, but many of those were put on hold or canceled altogether because of the pandemic. So in total, we now have served in 8 different communities across the state, and luckily, most of those have been with direct college and university access because we have used college students as our academic guides. And so we'll talk more about that in a minute. But I just thought this would be helpful for the audience to kind of see visually some of the key pieces to Mission Acceleration.
Oh, that's very helpful for sure. To think about the origins of it, the reasons that it came about. And I know later on, we're going to be talking about some successes there. What should families know about Mission Acceleration?
That's a great question as well. So, one thing that we've been so fortunate in talking with families about our program is, this is meant to be a resource. We know the financial burden that comes along with securing additional support, especially in reading for families. Hiring a private tutor or even finding a private tutor is not always something that's accessible or financially possible. And just that emotional toll that it takes on families when they know their child needs additional help in reading and in school, but don't necessarily know where to go to get those resources. So I would say we have identified ourselves as a partner with them to help them in the work that they do every day and helping their child reach their potential. And for us, our program, all tutoring isn't created equal. So we like to tell families and stakeholders that for us, we view tutoring as an opportunity to provide that one-on-one support, extra instruction, and actual teaching in a small group or in a one-on-one setting towards that specific goal of improving reading instruction. So for us, it isn't homework help or it isn't just reading with the child. Both of those are very important, but for us, we use an evidence-based curriculum to actually provide that extra dose of academic reading instruction that will help them fill those gaps.
Well, obviously your extensive background and teaching experience and then the experience that you have with the campaign for grade level reading, and as I recall, helping start many of these communities as campaign for grade level reading communities, it seems like it's all just sort of coming together.
Yes, I will say this has been a culmination, if you will, of several of my passions. So I'm very passionate about literacy instruction. I'm very passionate about children and families having access to these great programs. But more than that, empowering, in this case, college students to be, a really strong asset for children and helping them grow academically, as well as being that strong mentor and, voice of support for them.
Tell us a little bit more about how that works with the college students and how
Absolutely.
you get this started.
Yeah, the college students, and you'll see in just a second, in fact, I may flip through. The college students we go through a rigorous process of recruiting them and identifying the candidates that we think are the best and the brightest so that they've been academically successful. And we'll look at those academic guide eligibility requirements. But we have found academic guides that have their own academic success. So a 3.25 GPA, or higher has been that prerequisite to serve as an academic guide. They must be enrolled in a Mississippi college or university. And they do commit to about 10 hours a week for about 10 weeks in the fall, 10 weeks in the spring, and about 6 to 8 in the summer. And we do go through, obviously, the necessary background check and training. But it's really exciting because many of these college students are not education majors. So we have an opportunity to potentially rope them in and help that teacher pipeline. But more than that, looking at it from the perspective of we're creating advocates for strong reading programming in their own homes, in their own future professions, or in their own communities as they move forward after college.
Yes, creating advocates, and then at the same time, what the college students are receiving from this.
Yes, that's the part about this being mutually beneficial for both the K-5 students that we serve and for these college students, because many of them, they were limited in exposure and experiences outside of a computer screen during the pandemic. So many have been very grateful for the opportunity to serve and to teach children, whether that's going towards experience for their future career or gaining experience working with children, being a priority for them.
And of course, most of all, we do know from the research that children having that one consistent, supportive person in their lives is critical to everything else. And then the more that a child can have, the better. So, yeah, just tell us more. I think you have some more slides to show. So I'll just stop back for a minute and ask you to continue on.
Well, that is a crucial point behind why Mission Acceleration was designed, because that strong role model in a child's life, especially one that helps them overcome some deficits in their reading that maybe has hindered their confidence or hindered their willingness to participate in reading activities, especially outside of a classroom setting. So it's really exciting that these college students, this has not just been, a one college effort. It has taken partnerships from all over the state of Mississippi. So as you'll see on the screen right now, we have over 20 different colleges and universities that have had students participate in Mission Acceleration as academic guides. And these students have been undergraduate, graduate, traditional students, non-traditional students, business majors, education majors. It's been such a variety, but all with the same goal and same intention of helping children improve their reading. It's interesting that when we were talking about, the program and kind of how it started, to think a year ago, now fast forward a year, we've had almost 10,000 hours of academic instruction provided by these college students, but the program has scaled each semester. It's grown a bit, and I'm proud of that, because we didn't try to tackle, the whole state off the top, because we knew we needed to work out some details and really make this model work for the children and communities where we were placed. So as you can see, we did start last summer with about 86 kindergarten through fifth grade students. This summer, we had 395 that are finishing or almost finished. We had 24 academic guides, those college students that were serving as tutors in the summer of 21, and we had 136 served this summer. So I'm really proud to see that as word has grown and as these college students have had really great experiences, the word of mouth has helped us to expand. But going from 5 sites last summer, which is a little bit easier to manage than the 17 sites that we had this summer across 8 different communities, I'm glad to see that now we are reaching more children in more places.
That is just tremendous, Ashley. I can't wait to hear more. So what else do you have to share with us?
Yes. So let me go back. I mentioned that we're providing that double dose of academic instruction. So for us, we did choose a curriculum that already has an evidence base to support its use. It was actually designed for Tier 2 classroom instruction. So it's really intentional and really sequential, based on and systematic in the skills and the way that they're presented. So it does cover those essential components of reading. And it does provide opportunities for those components to be broken down in different ways so that students experience these skills, and it relates to their deficits as well. So we do use data, and you'll see that in just a moment, to help us identify what those deficits are and which of these components, more of the instruction needs to emphasize. In addition to that strong curriculum that the college students are using, that is scripted. So it does help everyone kind of level the playing field, whether you are an education major or you are a business major. It provides exactly what you can say, exactly how long you need to spend on each of these components, the type of reinforcement that you would need to provide. So it's very user-friendly, which I think has helped tremendously in terms of the success happening a little more quickly. But in addition to that, we have supplied students, kindergarten through fifth graders, with My On Reading accounts through Renaissance Learning. And we like to say this is the Netflix of books. It relates to their instructional reading level, so they can go on and find books that are interesting to them, that are appropriate and that are specific to the targeted level that they need to practice, so that it's not too easy and not too difficult. This has been a really great piece for us to be able to see students enjoying reading on their instructional level and having access at the click of a button to their little devices and tablets.
Well, I just want to reflect a minute on what you just said, which is tremendous. You have done a tremendous amount in a year. I think I heard correctly, 10,000 hours of individualized reading and tutoring. It has expanded across the state in ways that are extremely meaningful to the children, the families, the college students. You have a curriculum that's evidence-based. You have a curriculum that not only is evidence-based, but you have scripts so that we know that the intervention is consistent across sites. And the intervention is fun for children because you have this, what you call is sort of a Netflix of books. I mean, you have so many ingredients for what is all of those ingredients, if, as you will, maybe the independent variables for the dependent outcome variables from a research perspective. That's what I really want the audience to hear about. But the reason that this is happening is because you did so much research and background and obviously have the community support. So yes, let's talk about effectiveness and where you are now.
Yes, and you're exactly right. Fidelity of programming was really important to me, not just as a researcher, but as a practitioner. I wanted this product to be as high quality as one would expect in a classroom setting or in an academic setting. We obviously aren't, competing with high quality classroom instruction. That's that first exposure, that first dose, if you will. And that's why we call ourselves that double dose, that second dose of academic instruction, because we are using these pieces that we would expect these students to have access to in classroom settings. So carrying that expectation into community partners or into school opportunities that maybe traditionally weren't being used for tutoring. Maybe it was the sites where we've been able to build it into part of the school day to get access to those students that need it the most. Carving out those minutes that were being spent doing other things, that now they're getting that double dose during the school day. So yes, I would love to show you some information kind of about the data we're collecting and the evaluation, if you will. So we do have an outside evaluator, the Center for Research Evaluation at the University of Mississippi, that is helping us and working with us to use these key metrics to make sure we are making a difference, and using that to drive how we improve and evolve as we move forward. But in addition to looking at the dosage, so the number of total minutes children receive, we're looking at some of these other variables as well. The frequency of our tutoring sessions. We know right now that when students get 3 hours or more a week of this tutoring, We tend to see an increase in that achievement much more consistently than when they don't meet that dosage requirement. But we're looking at attendance rate. Is attendance, higher and more favorable in school or in community settings, or is that a wash? Is it, the same in both places? So obviously, we need them to be attending in order for us to provide that tutoring. We are fortunate to have different settings that we're operating in. So not only during the school day, but in community partner sites. So faith-based organizations or after-school centers, boys and girls clubs. We've had partners from those various settings that were able to do the exact same instruction in different places. But we've been looking at group size. When it's one-on-one, what does that, how does that impact that student growth compared to when maybe it is a group of 3 or 4 that have similar needs that academic guide can serve. So not only the frequency, but the duration of those, and then the format. When COVID threw us the kink of taking away a lot of in-person opportunities, we did say, okay, we need to have a virtual platform and an opportunity to serve students virtually in the event that we are all in quarantine and had to go back. So, did that impact efficacy? And then ultimately using that STAR literacy score, the scaled score, to help us determine if we're seeing growth. So this is from our spring data, our spring implementation. And I'm sorry, that's a little fuzzy. But this just shows you some of those key metrics across the site. So those 17 sites that I mentioned, and the setting that we talked about, whether they were after school or during school, and was it in a community setting or in a school setting. As you'll see, we only had one solely virtual site in the spring, and we did have one that was hybrid that kind of had to go in between in person and virtual. But for the rest of our programming this past spring, we were in person, which we were really excited about. And we think that makes a huge difference when students have had to do so much behind a computer screen for quite a while. But as you can see, consistency with group size, we did have a couple of groups where you see the 7 and 6. An academic guide may have had 7 students, but they worked with them in 2 different group settings. But that did impact, obviously, the total number. But we did keep that group size as small as possible. And as you can see, the average of these sessions, 30 minutes was sometimes hard to come by during the school day. But in our community sites, we had a little bit more time and those sessions were a little bit longer. And then obviously the total number of academic guides and scholars by site. And attendance as a whole, we did see improvement from past iterations because families and children and stakeholders are starting to see, hey, when students are there, they're able to get this important instruction in time with their academic guide. We want to make sure it's a priority. So all of this did, I think, contribute to our spring data and that success. So again, by site, looking at the pre-mean score for the grade level equivalent on that STAR reading test, where they started, and then ultimately when they post-tested. So for us, we did do a pre-test as soon as the semester began, and that post-test as soon as the last tutoring session had been completed. And over in the far right-hand column, that's the mean reading growth that we did see for each of these sites. So a couple of these was more than a year's worth of growth in these 10 weeks in the spring. And while that seems astronomical and impossible, for me, it's so exciting because for many of these children, this was their first, in some of these sites, this was our first iteration or semester of programming in the spring. So there was a lot of room for them to grow, and certain grade levels, especially for our upper grade students, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, for some of them, there's more room for them to grow because that gap has widened so significantly. We're excited to see that across the board, average 6 months of growth across these students participating in these 10 weeks of our spring program was something we absolutely wanted to celebrate.
Well, and it is something to be celebrated. If we had something on the screen with lots of applause or some of those emojis, this would be the time to put those in there. But then also thinking about, because you have programs in the summer, and we know for many years that some students who are already behind on grade level reading, and if they don't have that opportunities in the summer, then that summer slide often happens where children may lose 2 to 3 months of what they've already gained. So the fact that you're seeing the gains from fall to spring semester and you're continuing on the program in the summer is just tremendous. So kudos to you and everyone who's engaged in this. So yeah, you're going to talk about some other program wins I see on the slide.
Thank you. Yes. And that summer programming was really important to us. That's one reason why we were absolutely determined to start last summer, even if it meant small and mighty, because that summer slide is so prevalent, especially in students that are already struggling and that have spent a good bit of time out of school. You know, they're not getting that first dose of academic instruction during the summer. So we might be the only dose of academic interaction and reading instruction that some of them are getting during some of these summer months. So
Exactly.
yes, that in itself was a huge plus for us as serving in Campaign for Grade Level Reading communities. That's part of their coalition's efforts to make sure there's summer programming for children and families. But in addition to that 6 months of growth over the 10 weeks of our program services in the spring, I think these next two wins, I'm just proud of as well. But the fact that 3 out of every 4 academic guides, or about 72%, are actually more likely to consider teaching as a career option after serving as an academic guide. So in part of our data collection, we asked these college students prior to their service if they were considering education, and then asked them again after their semester of service, because they do commit to a semester at a time. They work with the same children for that semester. Those children don't rotate, so they get to build those partnerships and really get that bond. So the fact that now 72% of them, prior to what we were seeing when they entered, are willing to consider education and teaching as a career path, that's a celebration for us, because it will impact children and families in other parts of the state we haven't been able to touch yet. Also, 100% of our site supervisors, so each of our sites, we have a person that's on the ground that's kind of the point of contact and make sure the fidelity of programming is happening. And 100% of them believed that our academic guides were prepared and capable of providing this high quality instruction. Same thing, we polled them beginning and end to see, what did they think coming into our program? Were college students going to be able to do this? Did they think it would be high quality? So the fact that all of them thought that they were not only prepared but capable was definitely a win. And then the last example is just an actual visual representation of a child that participated in summer programming this summer. So she took her STAR reading test on the 9th of June and scored in about the 9th percentile with a 149 scale score. Took it again 3 weeks later, an 86th percentile with a 314 scale score. And for this student, I'm not going to say it was mission acceleration that gave her all the skills she needed in a 3-week time. But for us, I think it was that motivation and that willingness to step up, her own willingness to participate, to be more motivated to receive some of this information, and then to put it into practice. I think that is another example, if you will, of the data itself is important, but the children and the impact that it's having on their lives. And going back to the Children's Foundation's mission of helping them reach their potential, I think the program is doing that. And for that, I could not be any more thankful.
And thank you, Ashley. And this is exactly the reason that we want to spotlight programs such as the one that you are directing, and to determine ways that this can spread. And I think that this is probably a good segue into what can communities do? What about corporations? What about parents, individual donors? Because as I understood, this was grant dollars to get this started. But because of what has happened in a year and seeing dramatic results, it only seems that we would want to replicate this. So tell us how people can help and be engaged.
Absolutely. So, yes, you are correct. Our grant funds through the gear funds expire September 30th of this year. So, just a couple of months from now. And we have been working on additional grants to continue the funding source. But for us, we also have recently been approved through the University of Mississippi as a service center so that we can now provide this service at a cost to school districts or other community programs, our partners that want this work that are not in Mississippi Campaign for Grade Level Reading community. So we're able to take this now beyond just the campaign and into other places that want us. So we're hoping that school districts may have some federal dollars, especially through the ESSER ARP program, that they may have some opportunities to do some learning recovery initiatives, and that we would meet that criteria. We do have some private donors that are interested in sponsoring programs to serve children. So we're ironing out those details now, but we've come up with a price per student that now we know for that price we would be able to serve them for the fall, spring, and summer with the exact same program we've provided during the pilot, until we can secure that additional funding that would make it at no cost to our partners and community. So yes, if a corporation is interested in sponsoring children, our goal is to serve 500 in the school year 23-24, because the price that we've kind of negotiated, if we meet that 500 threshold, we can keep that cost down to about $2,000 a student, but that's for the fall, spring, and summer. So for one full school year, that in itself, we are really hopeful that we'll continue to find some funding to help these sites where we've already been established, but additional sites that have yet to come on board.
So it sounds like it would be a tremendous return on investment if you're thinking of this in terms of that amount of per child compared to maybe some social math of what it costs per child for remediation, which I think is much more than $2,000 per child, because that also is a cumulative effect. So opportunities for citizens within their own communities, opportunities for schools to determine ways that they can access this program, but then ways that every child in Mississippi who could benefit from this, whether they're in a college community or not, whether they're in a campaign for grade level reading or not, because as part of your bio, you talked about having a heart for all children in Mississippi. And thanks for reinforcing the Children's Foundation mantra about for Mississippi to meet its potential, we must make sure that all of our children reach their potential. So this has been a tremendous program today, chat. It's been good to reconnect with you, Ashley. Are there other things that you'd like to leave with the audience that we may not have covered? We certainly want to put your contact information on the screen again.
I think what I would leave the audience with is we've been able to see that when you bring stakeholders to the table and have these conversations about what children and families need, and being able to meet that need outside of just the school, we want to come alongside schools. Schools cannot do everything in isolation. They cannot be responsible for 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, 365-day a year programming. And so I think that's why community partners and advocates in communities to say, hey, we really want these opportunities for our children. And if the school district isn't able to do that within the school day, rallying some of these other partners to say, we can help with that. We can do these things in our faith-based centers. We can do these things in our child care centers, our after-school programs. I think this model has shown that we can be successful when everyone's coming to the table behind the same mission. So I hope that that mission resonates with others, and would love to talk more with anyone who's interested.
Well, thank you, Ashley. Thank you for having time to be on the chat today. And thank you on behalf of all children in Mississippi for what we hope will be a statewide reach very soon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Southward.